Hello and welcome. Let's Talk Tarot. So I've been getting some good comments and questions. Thank you so much, guys. I'm always curious to find out how people found tarot or how tarot found you. And I thought it might be interesting for you to understand how I read and why I started reading tarot. And it goes way back to probably my 14th or 15th year. I was at an outdoor fair, maybe a Renaissance fair, and I saw someone reading tarot, sitting down with the cards spread out and like telling a fortune to someone. I was really captivated, and I kept watching and watching. Now, I didn't go in for a reading myself, but I watched and tried to get a glimpse of what these cards were about, what they looked like. I was pretty fascinated, and the memory of the cards came back to me again and again. Well, in my 17th year, I was waiting tables at a restaurant, and I had these two women, and they were talking really excitedly, and I overheard them. They had come back from having their cards read. Wow, I was really nosy and I was really interested, and I just asked them, hey, I just heard you. Did you actually have your cards read with tarot cards? And they told me yes. They were so gracious and very kind, and they told me that yes, they did. And I said, where and how and who? Well, they gave me the name and phone number of a woman, and I called and set up my first tarot reading. And I was fascinated. I was 17, and the woman lived in the same town where I worked. And I was amazed, and I was a little bit nervous because she really knew some things about me that seemed like she shouldn't know. And I recall that it was profound, and I was captivated. And the cards that she used were, they weren't really big, and they weren't familiar to me. And I even asked her about the cards. What deck is this? Where did you get these cards? She said, over the years, I have just put together what I'm comfortable with reading and what my clients seem to be okay with looking at. And I thought that was really interesting. So later in that same year, I moved out of that state and I moved to another state. And I lived alone. Till my 21st year, I lived alone. I didn't know a whole lot of people. I spent a lot of time in contemplation. And I never forgot about that tarot reading. And I was really fascinated about the cards. So I picked up a regular playing deck, just like this, and I went about looking at the numbers and looking at the cards and trying to discern what they meant. What do they mean? And when you look at a regular deck of cards, there's no right side up or upside down. So you're probably understanding that I'm getting to the question of people asking about reversals. So I went about reading the cards, the regular playing cards, and just sensing and feeling what they meant and what they were about. And I remembered the cards that the tarot reader who I had been to, I remembered the symbols on the cards. And I put it together that the clubs are wands, and that the hearts are cups, and the spades are swords, and the diamonds are pentacles. So, that was pretty easy to figure out. And I just went about my way of learning to read the cards. I would read for myself. I would contemplate on them. I would remember what some of the cards looked like from my tarot reading. And the aces, thinking of the four suits and the aces, and that they're number one, and just having that in my mind. These are number one. And then, of course, going to the number twos and the number fours. And that's what I did. I just kind of was reading for fun for myself. And I got inspired one day. A girlfriend was visiting with me. Now, I was like 18 or 19 at this point, and I'd been reading the cards for myself. I had also been reading the cards for a few of my family members over the phone because I lived in a different state. And I would just pull them out and just go about my business like it was normal. And a girlfriend was at my little apartment, and I was having psychic visions. I could telepathy. I could read what someone was about to say, or I knew, for instance, oh gosh, what a drag that you got a flat tire this morning, but really nice that guy helped you. And someone would say, wait a minute, I didn't even tell you I got a flat tire this morning. How did you know? I kind of started learning, like, maybe I should not just blurt things out, because it seems so normal to me, so natural for me. And so here I am in my apartment. A girlfriend comes over. Well, she had left the waitressing job that we worked together. That's how I met her, and went to work working in an office. And I didn't see her very often. I was really excited to see her. She walked into my apartment, and I was getting all kinds of images and all kinds of information from her. And I said, oh my gosh, this new job of yours, there's so much going on you haven't even told me. I said, I've been doing this thing, reading cards. I'm going to read for you. And she's like, okay. And she said, I'm not going to tell you much about my new job. Let's see what you know. I went about reading her cards, and a whole story just opened, looking at the cards and looking at her and feeling this energy. And I just blurted it out and said, oh my God, you're having an affair with your boss. He is never going to leave his wife. Holy cow, you know what? He's going to fire you. You need to start looking for another job. This is not going to go well. In fact, right now she's finding out about this. And I blah, blah, blah. I said everything. That friendship went south. It was true, and it really freaked her out. And it's not that we weren't friends anymore, but she was certainly, it was very one-sided, and she was very cautious about me. And she did lose her job, and she had been sleeping with her boss. And I learned that discernment is something that I needed to learn, right? So I didn't really tell a lot of people what I was up to after that, because it's kind of difficult. If you're an empath and you have psychic abilities and you're wondering who to tell or who not to tell, I mean, I get it, I understand. But this stuff for us is real, right? So anyway, in my 21st year, I moved back to my home state, and I looked up that tarot reader. You guys remember the old phone books? I looked the woman up, and she was still there. She was still reading. It wasn't until my 21st year that I bought my first tarot deck. And the deck that I bought was the Rider-Waite deck that I've been using in this series, Let's Talk Tarot. This absolute deck right here that I'm holding is 40 years old. I've had this deck since then. And I have another deck that I bought for myself maybe 10 or 12 years ago, the same Rider-Waite deck, but I only use it for myself. Maybe it's been 20 years actually. But this one, it's really worn. It's very well worn, and actually when I do pictures for the video series, I use photos of my own personal deck, because these are, marked up. The others look so much prettier on screen. But my point about this deck is that in 1911 was the first year that the minor arcana had pictures, that they were illustrated. Before, they were simply the number, and there were no reversals. They were just like this. So the reversals have come out, well, in our modern time for sure, and I think that the reversals in the major arcana always mattered. But imagine, before 1911, there was no such thing as reversal, because everything was just numbered. After the minor arcana were illustrated, because they were illustrated in a certain way, there are right side up, right sides, and then there are reversals. And the reversals do have meanings. Depending on the cards that they lay around in the spread, they can mean different things. For me personally, when I read for others, I don't use reversals. I keep them in mind. I pay attention, because when someone takes the deck of cards from me and they shuffle it, they're going to rifle it, they're going to do however they do. And sometimes I do notice when the card comes upside down, but I always read right side up, because I'm reading intuitively. And the reversals can typically be something negative. And because I'm reading intuitively, I'm already getting the essence of what the card means, whether it's right side up or upside down. And also, I have learned a lot about discernment and what to say and what not to say, and how to say things, and the words to use when you're reading for someone else. If it's something cautionary, not to be alarming, but to be forthright. our words can really affect how someone remembers something or how someone reacts to something. So I'm always very careful to read the energy of my querent and choose my words carefully, to be truthful, to be forthright, and to be compassionate and to be caring. Put myself in their shoes. You don't want to miss any of the information, because a lot of what we do as tarot readers is we're advising people about what to look out for, opportunities to grab hold of, and even people. So again, when we look at the court cards in a regular deck, upside down, right side up, it doesn't matter. I really learned with reading tarot to feel if that court card is representing my querent or if that court card is representing another person. That matters a lot to the querent, because if you can feel that this is their energy and this faced card is actually them, it helps you get a little deeper into the reading, because it's always easier to read about the person sitting in front of you. Now, when you know it's not that person, you're kind of using the energy from the querent about the person. So as you're reading and you identify this is not you, this is someone in your life, in your circle. Is it a workmate? Is it a family member? You can usually get those kinds of things. And so whether it's right side up or upside down, to me, I'm really reading what the energy tells me about that person around the querent in that part of their life, in that part of their situation. So I wanted to show a couple of other cards, because I have said in a couple of my videos that I really recommend reading the book. Every tarot deck comes with a book. The Rider-Waite deck comes with just this little handbook. Most decks come with a little book like this, and it's really helpful. I didn't read a tarot book till I was probably in my 40s or 50s, really. And it's super helpful. It really, really is. But my point is that however you learn the cards and how they resonate with you and how you're able to share the information with others, this is very personal, because we're all so different. And I'm reading the energy of the querent, and when they have a question and the cards start coming out, I see a story. And then I relay the story back to them. And as I've said before, whenever someone sits in front of me for a tarot reading, I ask their permission if I can contact their higher self and bring forth the information from them to them. I'm literally a messenger. I'm delivering the message, and I'm able to feel and sense and see what's really important that's going on around them when they themselves can't see it, because they're too stuck in their emotions, or they're too involved in their analytical thinking and spinning, and so they're not seeing something because they're kind of stuck in it. And so I'm offering help because I can see a bigger picture, and I'm not emotionally involved, so I can share with them what's going on and maybe opportunities or options that they can't see right now, or even stumbling blocks or challenges that they're kind of not aware of because they're so busy thinking or feeling something else. If you haven't yet purchased a deck, well, you know, I love the Rider-Waite deck simply because it's the first deck that had the minor arcana illustrated, and it comes from some really ancient esoteric wisdom. So I really like that. When you look at this book that was published in 1911, at the same time that the illustrated minor arcana was published, and you get into reading this book, I won't read any excerpts to you, but it's very, the language is old-fashioned. It actually uses a lot more words than we need in our modern day. And so it's fascinating. It talks a lot about the Kabbalah. It talks a lot about Rosicrucianism, a lot about Freemasonry, about what was going on in England in the late 18th century and before, about these occults. So it's a pretty deep read. There's another deck that's called the Hanson-Roberts deck, and that is a card here that in this deck there's a card that is not assigned, and it actually means we're finished here. There's no more information coming. Stop reading. Not all decks have this. It's pretty old-fashioned, and it's important. There's a certain card that I will kind of assign to myself as that when someone's digging, we're trying to get more information, or I can simply say, we're not going to get any more information at this point. And the cards will tell you, they will tell you. But my point about the Hanson-Roberts deck is that the illustrations are very similar to the Rider-Waite deck, but they're a little more modern, they're a little more playful, they're not quite as harsh, and maybe not quite as scary to look at. And the best thing is that this woman named Laura Clarson, she wrote this book. I think it's from the early 80s. Anyway, I'll put some links down below for the cards and for this book. She wrote it specifically to modernize the language of tarot, to update a lot of the meanings, and she uses reversals in this as well. But the point of this is that the cards themselves are not huge. They're the same size as a regular playing deck, so they're not so hard to shuffle and to handle, and they're beautifully illustrated. They have really great pictures. They're very animated, and also the book itself, it has great definitions, it has great explanations, it goes into some pretty good depth about each of the cards, and then it tells you about the cards by number. So it goes all of the 8s, and then all of the 9s, and then the court cards. But the language in this is updated to our modern language, that how we speak to each other now. And I really like this deck, and I really like this book. There's another book. So I told you I didn't really read the book until I was in my 40s, probably really close in my 50s. But this is a book that I bought in my 20s. And I referred to it here and there now and then, but not very often. I actually started reading this book because I was studying the Tree of Life. I remembered that there was some information in this book about the Kabbalah Tree of Life. This book talks about tarot, history of tarot, what tarot is. It goes card by card, suit by suit. She uses Eden Gray. This is from 1971. She uses the Rider-Waite cards in her descriptions in here. And then she goes into astrology and using astrology with the cards. And she goes into the Tree of Life and the tarot and the Tree of Life. It's really fascinating. And the book is still out there. The author is no longer with us. But this book I've had for so many years. And I'll tell you guys, probably in the last 6 or 7 years, I have read it and read it and read it and reread it. And it's so much information, and it's so appropriate. So anyway, I'm going to put links to everything I've shown you in the description below. I do have an Amazon affiliate, and if you order something directly through a link in my description, I'm going to get a little commission, probably like 21 cents, but it does not change the price of your product. It doesn't add to the price at all. It's just convenient for you if you're interested in any one of the books or decks that I've mentioned here. And in the next video, we're going to continue with our minor arcana, the number 7. And when we weave stories with our number 7, I will use reversals, okay? Because they do matter, they do make a difference. And again, we're all so very independently unique from each other. And your method, although it may not be my method, doesn't make it better or lesser, and vice versa. So thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video.